doesn't it feel amazing when all the chips are down and then all of a sudden the reinforcements come to the rescue? Yep, it's probably one of the best feelings in the world, especially if you're watching these scenes from the comfort of your homes or the cinema halls. Keeping that in mind, the TV Regent has decided to give you the top 25 times when reinforcements arrived in films and TV.
Oh, this is not good!
That's not good.
It's not often that you look back at Top Gun Maverick and think, man, Hangman was such a nice guy. I know his character arc wasn't meant to play out that way, but the writers knew exactly what they were doing here because it made his last-minute rescue all the more impactful. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I genuinely thought this was the end of the road for Tom Cruise's Maverick, even though I know they didn't have the guts to kill him off this way. The direction was executed perfectly, but the final payoff felt so much more satisfying when it actually happened. See, this is what I liked about the movie. Every character had some kind of arc, even if it's the jerk who you just felt like slap him. Also, the way Rooster shouted, "This is not good," sounded eerily similar to his dad in the first Top Gun film. It was so haunting for a moment. But luckily, Hangman redeemed himself and we all got to go home with happy faces.
Hey, Hangman, you look good.
I am good, Rooster. I'm very good. I'll see you back on deck.
Us millennials have a strong sense of value for the films we grew up with. The Chronicles of Narnia happens to be one such series of films that not many people actually talk about today. However, to people like yours truly, it was just a couple of levels below something like, say, Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings. As far as epic battles go, just look at the encounter at Aslan's Howl. It shaped up to be something truly devastating. But then we saw the return of Aslan as well as his reinforcements, which basically included one massive river god. Well, technically the talking lion is a god himself, so you could say that he was just flexing his authority with this tremendous display. I mean, bro's so badass, he tells his parents when to go to bed. But yeah, on a serious note, grand scale battles like this one are hard to come by nowadays, and I'd really like to see this genre get a little bit more love.
Friday, what are they firing at?
Something just entered the upper atmosphere.
I'm not going to talk about the box office status for the Marvels, but I will mention how Brie Larson somewhat redeemed herself in the final battle of Avengers Endgame. Look, gotta be fair to everyone, so we can't exactly fault Captain Marvel for never being around because the fans don't really like the actress. However, if she can take down Thanos' ship within all of 1 business minute, then I'm more than happy to have her on my team. I was actually wondering how the Avengers were going to survive that attack after Wanda started dominating the Mad Titan. I mean, personally, I would have loved to see Thor charge up Iron Man's repulsor cannon once again, but Captain Marvel obliterating the ship, that also works out just fine. She did end up saving everyone with this move, so we gotta give her credit for that. I mean, even Thanos was bamboozled like those viral dog videos on TikTok. Ridley Scott may widely be remembered for classics like Alien and the OG Blade Runner, but he's also directed some cult hits like Black Hawk Down. I'm a sucker for shootout scenes, so this particular moment here had me holding onto my seat till the soldiers got their much-needed backup. They say that you should always look to the skies when in need of help, and in this case, help did come from above. The cinematography was on point, and the effects are pretty impressive considering this was released in 2001. Of course, everything worked out in the end, but just look at this from another perspective. Imagine you're leading a task force which has the Jedi Master, Elf Prince, Bane, and Venom in one man. Mr. Fantastic, the Kingslayer, and Mr. Dunphy all together, and you still end up losing 2 choppers and 18 soldiers? Come on, that's just unacceptable to me.
thought we had a shot. There's just too many of them.
But there are more of us, Poe. More of us.
Yep, heard it many times before, this movie should not exist in the Star Wars universe. However, it does, and there's nothing you can do to change that fact, you know? Well, at least we can appreciate the few impressive scenes that do make the film a little bit more enjoyable. And Lando's fleet arriving just in time to save the day is one of them. Poe really thought it was the end of the road for him and his squad, but then Lando shows up almost as if he wanted to rub it in his face. I mean, a legend will always remain a legend, won't he? The timing of his arrival was on point, and the domination that followed really made the whole sequence a lot more enjoyable. Man, if only the producers of this movie had someone step in at the last minute like Lando, they would have been spared of the fan backlash.
So long, Sky Trash.
Not impressed.
Imagine being such a badass that the freaking Justice League has to depend on you to bail them out. Okay, I guess I shouldn't be using such a statement when the man in question is the most powerful member of the same team. Seeing Superman come to the rescue in the Snyder Cut had a totally different vibe, and it goes on to show how important a director is to the overall output. The black suit, the sudden appearance in front of Steppenwolf, and the blatant thrashing that followed all came together like a beautiful symphony. Of course, any scene involving Kal-El is bound to be awesome, but bro literally defeated a dude who was dominating both Aquaman and Wonder Woman at the same time. Honestly speaking, he saved the Justice League from outright humiliation because, let's face it, the Flash ain't the strongest man in the room, and there's only so much that Batman can do with his limited strength as a human. Oh man, this one's an all-time classic, and it really hits you harder no matter how many times you watch it. The final battle in particular was an extended sequence that gripped all of our hearts for each and every second. I don't know about you, but I was desperately hoping for some miracle to happen when Captain Miller found himself mortally wounded and shooting a freaking tank with a tiny pistol. That moment was so powerful, so when backup did finally arrive to save Miller from the opposition soldiers, there were tears of joy, not just on the battlefield, but also in the cinema halls. Steven Spielberg is a legendary director, and he proves his reputation perfectly with what he did in Saving Private Ryan. Also, huge shout out to Tom Hanks. He played his role to a T and complemented the tone of the film with flawless grace. I still find it hard to believe that this is the same dude who played Forrest Gump.
I got movement. Hold position. Something's coming.
If it's the highest earning movie of all time, you can bet your bottom dollar that the final battle is going to be memorable. There's so much to appreciate in this scene. It kicks off with 3 minutes of pure human brutality. Whether it was the Marine deployment or the mechanical and military power of the technological humans, it just seemed unstoppable at one point. And then the Na'vi close in with their beasts in full force and immediately remind us that the humans are fighting giants riding the alien versions of dragons and elephant-sized horses. Aircrafts get tossed around like toys, arrows are the length of freaking pikes, and the Na'vi gunners are using human LMGs like they're toys. It's kind of poetic because both sides get a reality check in their own way. The Na'vi and their giant monsters get shredded by the bullets and bombs of their tiny invaders, while the Marines and their war machines get dunked on by the sheer size and power of their nature-based counterparts. Luckily, the reinforcements managed to do well enough to let justice prevail. Mark Wahlberg is a weird guy, isn't he? He'll either play some of the most obnoxious roles ever, like in Ted, or he'll be one of the worst possible victims of war. That's kind of what happens here in Lone Survivor, actually, and while the movie primarily focuses on highlighting the different faces of war and conflict, it's the final rescue scene that makes it to my list. It was amazing to see the locals risk their own lives to protect Marcus. You do need backup when you're up against a military-grade opponent. So it was a huge relief to see the army come back for one of their own. I think that this was the whole point of the movie too, although in a highly patriotic depiction. The creators really wanted the audience to see this as the most powerful scene in the movie. After all, the whole point was to never leave a fallen comrade behind.
What is that?
The Dark Knight trilogy is an unforgettable phenomenon in the superhero genre, but let me ask you a question. Do you remember Batman Begins as well as the other two films? It's something of an underrated gem in a highly appreciated trio, so I want to set things right by mentioning the escape scene that Bruce Wayne managed to pull off with some innovative reinforcements. I mean, it does make sense for a guy named Batman to make an escape with bats as his camouflage, but we don't really see much of this in the later movies. I think that's what really worked for Batman Begins. It presented the Dark Knight as a myth and as a force of nature, rather than just a bored billionaire dressed up as a bat. It was slick, it was badass, and it was most definitely in line with his brand image. Also, if the James Bond rumors with Christopher Nolan turn out to be true, then you know what, we're in for a solid treat. This would have primarily been a list with film entries, but I'm willing to make any kind of sacrifice if it involves Luke Skywalker. The Mandalorian was actually a very promising show that gave everyone hope for the next chapter in the Star Wars saga. Now, it did turn out that the series hit its peaks with this rescue scene, but to be honest, there's no way you can top something as awesome as the primary hero of the franchise coming back to save the day. And make no mistake, Luke Skywalker is the most important character in the world of Star Wars, unless you're also considering Darth Vader. He has a fan base much larger than all of the Disney Plus shows put together. So for him to make such an epic entrance to save Mando and Baby Yoda, Grogu, was top-notch stuff. I think it's very clear that they wanted to model this on the 2016 Darth Vader rage scene, but I'm not going to complain about that. You know something from 90s and early 2000s films that's severely missing in modern cinema? It's the campy feeling you get when the movie's conflict gets resolved. Take the example of Behind Enemy Lines from 2001. It's a straightforward war action flick with Owen Wilson doing an amazing job as Lieutenant Chris Burnett. However, when he's almost down and out for the count, the choppers come in to save his life and he can finally live to say wow for another day. It's a nicely crafted scene that truly gives you a warm, buzzy feeling when the protagonist is rescued by his comrades, but I also want to give a huge shout out to the stuntmen who pulled off the escape scene perfectly. The producers of Loki have them to thank, otherwise there would have been a Mobius-sized hole in the series.
Glad you like the view, Romanoff. It's about to get better.
Now we're all expecting to see more of Nick Fury in Marvel's Secret Invasion, but since that didn't go the way that we wanted it to, there's always his helicarrier scene in Age of Ultron to fall back on. Just because it's the Avengers doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need backup. The Sokovia battle was definitely a step up from the first Avengers film, so Nick coming in with the additional transport sure did a world of good to our superheroes. Can you even imagine how badass you need to be not to just command an elite squad of overpowered fighters, also to save their butts in the most desperate time of need? Alright, fine, he can save Quicksilver, but Evan Peters made up for that loss in the X-Men universe, right? You know, I was actually expecting to see the helicarrier in the Endgame sequence as well, but hey, can't always have it all, can you?
This is S.H.I.E.L.D.?
This is what S.H.I.E.L.D's supposed to be.
This is not so bad.
I'm out of ammo, out of ideas.
Okay, wait, let me paint a picture. You're almost down and out for the count against a whole bunch of Decepticon robots, and they've cornered you from all angles. You've only got a couple of Autobots helping you out, and they're even down to their last few breaths. Then, all of a sudden, Optimus Prime comes to the rescue riding a freaking dinosaur robot with a whole team of reinforcements. It doesn't get more badass than this, especially the fact that Optimus was commanding Grimlock as if it was his new pet. Technically, it should be like a dragon and dinosaur hybrid because of the fire stuff, but as long as he's with the Autobots, then you know what, I'm not complaining. The rescue was obviously epic, but I also want to highlight how Optimus basically beat Grimlock into becoming his pet dinosaur. After all, if he was from a prehistoric era, then power would be the only quality he'd answer to. Hey, look at this. It's a kids movie in the middle of all these badass rescues. Toy Story is an exceptional franchise that holds good for both children as well as adults. I could get into all the life lessons it teaches you, but we're not here for that, are we? We want to see some awesome reinforcements come in to save the day. That happens in the most unexpected fashion in the incinerator scene because Woody and his buddies are saved by the aliens at the very last moment. To be honest, I wasn't expecting to see something this heavy in a Pixar film, but they didn't overdo it by much, so I guess the kids would have been able to handle it. I mean, seriously though, this particular moment made everyone anxious, and seeing that giant claw coming in at the right time brought a whole lot of joy to the audience back when this film released.
Have you not? What?
Welcome to the top 10. We're kicking it off with one of the most epic surprises in cinematic history. This was back when nobody knew what Star Wars was, because, well, I mean, it was literally the first ever installment of the franchise. The reason it became a blockbuster was because of an immaculate story, likable characters, and badass scenes like the one I'm about to praise. I did just hype up Luke Skywalker not too long ago, and he's the star of the show here as well, but it was Han Solo with his surprise entrance in the Millennium Falcon that won everyone's hearts. Mind you, this is the grand finale where Luke manages to destroy the Death Star, so a sense of euphoria was always going to prevail, wasn't it?
Come back, I didn't do it. Well, I was gonna let you get all the credit and take all the reward.
What do you see?
Sometimes I ask myself why I haven't spoken about this film as much as I should have, you know? It's one of Christopher Nolan's masterpieces, and that's exactly why I've placed it higher than the Batman entry. We're all well aware of the ugly side of war, but it's the soldiers who have to deal with all of that trauma. So when Commander Bolton sees the civilian ships coming to rescue, it must have felt like a huge burden was just lifted off his shoulders. The beauty of this scene is that it showcases the gratitude of the common man towards the soldiers who lay down their lives to keep them and their families safe. Can you imagine how proud those soldiers must have felt upon seeing such a wholesome sight? The fact that such a thing happened in real life just makes me so happy. I did include one TV show, so here's another one from a massive series. I know there's a big Star Wars versus Star Trek debate happening every day on some online forum, but why can't we just love both franchises, hey? Anyway, I want to talk about Last Minute Rescue, so let's look at the one where Captain Will Riker takes on Commander O to rescue his old buddy Picard with his Starfleet. It's a nice little flex for Will because his army is pretty badass in terms of numbers. Of course, the whole thing was made to look seamless, and I really like the back and forth between Will and Picard that followed. See, why can't Professor X and Magneto have the same kind of relationship? I would have actually placed him much higher on this list, but this entry has been given top honors way too many times, so I've decided to keep him a bit lower just for better competition. I mean, you already know how much I love Thor's Wakanda entry scene. Bro was so overpowered that he alone could have sufficed as an entire army's worth of reinforcements. When guys like Captain America, Black Panther, and even the Hulkbuster are facing problems, the God of Thunder just casually dropped by and showed them how to fight an alien army in 10 business seconds. Sure, he brought Groot and Rocket Raccoon with him, but they kind of felt like cheerleaders in comparison.
Your haircut? Notice you've copied my beard.
Man, I know this particular entry is supposed to focus on Gandalf saving his buddies in an epic final battle, but I've got to give a shout out to Theoden for that speech he gives before charging towards the enemy. Also, the look of relief on Aragorn's face was so nicely done by Viggo Mortensen because it made you feel a sense of confidence in what was going to follow. He literally had the look of a man who'd accepted defeat and was awaiting the inevitable, but completely changed his whole vibe after seeing Gandalf with his backup. You know, they should re-release the Lord of the Rings trilogy in theaters just to give the younger audience a taste of what grand cinema is supposed to be like. You should be thanking me for bringing out so many hidden gems, you know. Anyone can guess an MCU or DC film, but can you tell me that you've watched 2005's Kingdom of Heaven? It's a rather poignant film with loads of subtext, but I'm not here to teach you the art of cinema, okay? I just want to appreciate a nice rescue scene. The attack on Jerusalem wasn't a pretty sight in terms of the story's context, especially when you look at how defeated and clueless Balaam was at one point. Luckily, he managed to overcome the odds and show Saladin the way ahead after he got his Christian army to come to the rescue. The movie then heads into some very heavy philosophy, so I'm going to stop it right here.
I pray you pull back your cavalry and leave this matter to me.
I pray you retire unharmed to Damascus.
Here's a fantasy series that isn't as loved as it should be, but it still does have a faithful fan base. The Chronicles of Narnia gave us many memorable moments, but take a look at the final battle in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Just when you think the White Witch is going to have her way and take Peter's life, Aslan shows up with a massive army of reinforcements and turns the tables in a jiffy. I've always liked lions as an animal, so I totally enjoyed seeing Aslan save Peter from the White Witch and then take her life as she simply watches him in amazement. Huge shout out to Tilda Swinton though, she really is Hollywood's chameleon.
It is finished.
Okay, so if we're doing TV shows, then I've obviously got to include Game of Thrones, don't I? This was easily the most hyped up moment of the season, so it only makes sense for me to put it in at number 3. The Battle of the Bastards lived up to all its expectations as far as the action was concerned, and it was topped off by a nice little rescue at the end when Sansa and Littlefinger showed up with the Knights of the Vale. It finally brought some energy back into Jon Snow's army, and I was ecstatic AF because we finally got to see Ramsay get what he deserves. That dude needed therapy, but I guess death by pitbull was a much better option. I'm sure you must have been expecting to see this take the crown, and it is worthy of the top spot, but the margin was almost negligible, so I've decided to give someone else a chance. Anyway, what's there to be said about this scene that hasn't already been said? You've got almost all the MCU superheroes coming together for one legendary showdown, and the scene so packed with action that you almost forgot how long it actually is. If Infinity War made us upset with its ending, this moment here made up for all that grief. I mean, sure, we're all crying again because of Iron Man, but that actually adds to the impact of the grand finale. So, who's taking the top honors today?
Avengers!
Assemble.
The world of men will fall.
If there's one franchise that I love more than the MCU, it's the Lord of the Rings, and it's exactly why the ride of the Rohirrim encounter takes top honors today. When all hope was lost, with even Gandalf not being able to do anything about it, we heard the Horn of Rohan, and the rest was history. I could go on and talk about the epic battle that followed, but that's not the point here, is it? After all the plot development and character growth, it boiled down to this encounter, and Theoden for sure wasn't gonna back down. I really feel bad for those who weren't able to watch this on the big screen. This was literally the end game of the 2000s. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're gonna like.